Characters. Who are they? What are they? Who will they become? So much goes into the creation of a character, their backstory, culture, beliefs, image, eye color, description, personalities, and so much more. As readers, we only get a glimpse of what truly goes into each character. So grab a beverage and get comfortable as we explore this episode's character in depth with your host, Madilynn Dale. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Character Driven. I am really excited for tonight's episode because we're going to be talking about a character from one of my new favorite series. This has kicked Thrown a Glass to the curb and has replaced my love of fiction. So you guys definitely, if you have not checked out this author's work, grab it because the link is in the description. But without further ado, let me bring in our guest, Mr. Green, and let him introduce himself and tell us a little bit about the series and this character that we're going to be chatting about.
Sure. Well, thanks very much for bringing me on and for such nice things you say about the series. It's very, very surprising. So yeah, I'm David Green. I am a fantasy author. I live in Galway in Ireland, and yeah, that's pretty much the most interesting things about me, really. There's not much else. So the series is kind of like an epic fantasy. I'm currently right at the end of writing the last book in the series. So it's it will be a series of 4 with a little kind of short story prequel, and it's about like kind of. I mean, it's a big thing about like good versus evil and all the kind of spaces in between, but it's very, very character driven, which is great for this show. And we kind of follow people that are kind of caught in the middle of this nation that is like built on war, and it's kind of possibly its ramifications of its kind of hostility are coming to bear, and we kind of follow the characters that are kind of paying the price for it, which isn't their fault in some ways, but some ways it is. We kind of have a look at the good side and the bad side and in between. And one of the characters that we meet in the 3rd book, although he's mentioned a couple of times before, and in the prequel, is a guy called Greton, who is a real fun character to write. And I'd been planning on bringing him in for quite some time, and it was the 3rd book where he was going to make his introduction. So I was very, very excited to get to him.
Yes, and I really I love how his character interacts with everyone from the start of that book to the finish. Where did the idea for Greton come from? Like, how did he kind of make himself known and you start plugging him in?
But the first thing is like he's autistic, and a lot of his traits are either I'm autistic as well, and so is my son, and a lot of his traits are kind of borrowed from my own and my son's, and like kind of like merging together. But what I kind of wanted to do as well was that I was really interested in having showing first and foremost an artistic character who's very capable of doing things, and and also kind of shining a light on like kind of the challenges that artistic people face and would face in a fantasy world like this one. But what I also wanted to do was I was really, really keen to, in this world that's like there's a lot of magic and there's a lot of like kind of faith and belief, and there's a lot of questions about like where things come from, and where does magic come from, where does these gods that they're supposed to worship come from, and so on. I wanted to have a character who was kind of like more of a philosopher and a scholar than a mage, and he is like a spark, as they are called in this world, but he's not a particularly strong one. Like, he's not renowned for his magic. His magic is quite weak. What he is renowned for is his map making and his philosophy and his love of brandy and other things like that, right? And he's he was a good kind of counterpoint for it. And there's one of the main characters. She's on a particular journey where a lot of people that she's surrounded with are she's kind of pulled away from, and she kind of needed someone at this point in the story that is going to kind of help her kind of come into her own a little bit, and Greton was perfect for that.
He definitely was, because I felt like he really balanced her out, considering the events that had happened and where she was at the start of the series, or that's the series, so the start of this book, because she does go through a lot, and she continues to go through a lot. And Greton, I love that you made the skills not pertaining to magic his stronger suits, because as that magic is gone in this book, spoiler alert, guys, that plays a huge role in survival for a lot of them.
Yeah, and that was one of the things. And was like, obviously going into this book, magic has changed quite a lot going into this book from where it was at the start of the series. And as you say, like for some people, it's gone altogether. So for someone like Greton, who didn't particularly rely on it, and found other ways to kind of be useful in this world, and that was more of his own strengths. It's more or less fine for him, because he's like, I'll just get on with it and just do the things I've always been doing, and brew my little potions, and think my way out of things. And that was one of Colleen's one of Colleen's flaws, is that she possibly doesn't think about things all too often and acts quite impulsively sometimes. And relies on, and she's someone who's kind of like, come from a Sparker family, and she's like, had this power for so long, and quite a vast power. Yeah. So to kind of meet up with someone who's never had to rely on it is interesting for her as well.
Maybe that's why I find myself relating to her a little more, is the impulsivity of her decisions. So, because I tend to just leap into things. But
that's good sometimes, And, I like her a lot. And I mean, in the second book, where she kind of, I think there's a bit where something and other things explode, and then she kind of says, "Well, yeah, I'm getting quite good at blowing things up, so maybe I'll do that."
Yes, and that's even mentioned. It continued a little bit in book 3. They talk about that a few times. But Greton does seem to pull her down to earth. Like, wait, let's think about this. Let's formulate a plan. So, but his knowledge is so cool. Especially when it comes to helping her figure out what's going on inside her mind. If that, without giving too many spoilers to those viewing, so his past, he's been living for a long time. He's had multiple people that are really close. How did that influence his journey during this story?
So Sparkers are quite long-lived, and there's more to kind of be revealed about that in the last book, about the kind of longevity compared to the power and stuff like that they have. But Greton is particularly quite long-lived. So he actually doesn't know how old he is. Then that, again, this is something that comes into the 4th book. He has a discussion with someone where he's like, well, my parents didn't really ever celebrate dates. They never had a head for it. So it's like, he's like, I remember a war happening, and I was young enough to remember it. So it was like, well, that was 280 years ago. And it's like, yeah, I remember that one. So I'm at least 280. Right? So he doesn't really mind all that much. He just celebrates his birthday on Eru Day every year, which is this version of Yule Tide or whatever. But yeah, that was another thing about him as well. I wanted to kind of have a very old character that's towards the end of his days, which he is, even for his his years. Hello, and so he's. Yeah, so he's I know I'm much older, because Colleen isn't young, but she's in a mid-30s, so she's but as a Sparker she's young enough. So it was a nice counterpoint to kind of have that together. So, but it was nice to kind of have this person who kind of, the thing is with Greton, like he's kind of challenged as well. Like he thinks about things a lot, but he kind of thinks that he has everything figured out. You know, he's spent his life studying the spark. He's not been strong in it, but he's studied it and he understands it better than anyone, which he does. You know, to a point. You know, he's he doesn't tell lies, but so you know when he says he knows more than anyone else, he knows more than anyone else. But his understanding of it has changed because, like, you know, they uncover some certain things about like the universe and everything. But what I like about him as well is that he's always like, I knew it, you know.
Yes. And the joy he gets, like when he discovers like that something he thought was real or was true, he finds out that it is, and he has a way to kind of pursue studying it more. The excitement is very, very strong. Like you can feel it as a reader very well.
Yeah. He's my son's very like that, you know, and it's you know, he's I mean, there's a quite a like, you know, tense kind of scene and confrontation where like a lot of kind of revelations are kind of revealed, and Greton's reaction is like, I knew it, you know, and he's very like pleased about it, you know, once the danger has passed. But you know, he's another thing with him that you mentioned about like he's had a lot of companions. So like Greton's asexual, like, you know, and I didn't want to kind of like the autism, I didn't want to explicitly say that's what it is because it's second world fantasy, and you know that term doesn't exist in this world. But you know, it's explicitly there, and like the way he acts and talks and interacts with things, and like, you know, how he blocks out sound quite a lot. People that, you know, are autistic or around people that are autistic would recognize it, and it's the same I tried to do with the asexuality as well. So like he's had like companions, as he calls them, people that he loves and he's close to, but like, you know, I think at one point he says something about like, you know, that all the other stuff is just too messy for his tastes, right? And just he's not interested. And like I think that was an important part of his character as well, because it's like he kind of loves people for who they are, and the different types of people, and you know, from different genders and different kind of things. Like it doesn't matter to him. It's just like, you know, what kind of person they are. And like, you know, one of my favorite scenes is the bit in his secret library that he has, where like, you know, Colleen sees it for the first time, and that was a really I think touching scene to write, and I think it's one of my favorites in the series, in the whole series actually. Really kind of gets to see his, like, you know, his special place.
Yes, dude, his special place is like my dream, because that place is huge and it's full of books, and I was just like, oh man, this is like, for those of you watching, if you think of Beauty and the Beast, the library there, this is like way, 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 way better than that. So 10 times better, at least. Yeah. And that it's so cool, because she does have a really cool reaction when he brings her into that. And it's cool how he slowly kind of pulls her into his world and her into him. Well, her into him. That did not sound okay. It's cool how he pulls her into the world that he's got going on, but in turn, she's also showing him a different perspective of stuff.
Right, yeah. He's out of the study, and he's in the world, and he's having to go places and go and do things, which is, you know, out of character for him. Like he'll occasionally like leave the city and go to, you know, his little house that he has. You know, he'll go there sometimes, but mostly he'll just like, you know, I mean, he's I know how old he is, so exactly how old he is. You know, he's very, very old. He's 292, so he's very old. So you know, he's going out adventuring on horses and stuff is not what he would like to do, but like he's forced to do it at the start, and then like, you know, he sees something in Colleen, like, you know, he's they have like a bit of a shared history as it is. So like, you know, and so that they have like he sees something in her, and like, you know, he wants to help her, and you know, he's and she needs the help, so she needs his help.
So Gretons skills with archery, was that something he picked up when he was younger? towards like being a kid? Did his family teach him how to use a bow, or was it something he learned from someone else?
So this is this might be quite a bit of news, really. So the next book I'm working on is a Greton spin-off from when he was younger.
Yay!
And it's going to be hopefully the first of many, and it's going to be set when he's around 111. So it's about 180 years in the past. So he's a bit younger. He's still quite old, but he's still younger. And it's going to be him in another part of the world. He's going to be in a different place from where this story is set, for reasons. And there's going to be a lot of things where Greton kind of picks up some of the skills and some of the things like his spy network and other things like that. That's all going to be explored in this series. It's going to be a little bit different. It's going to be more like of a cozier fantasy than the Empire of Ruin. I have the first book all kind of outlined and I'm ready to write it as soon as I finish the last one in this series. That's the one I'm going to. So there's a lot to kind of, he's got nearly 300 years is a long time, and even if you say, well, he's been, say for example, he's been back in Houtville for the last 100 years, that's still another almost 100 years of stories to kind of tell with him,
So he's not originally from there then. So
yeah, well, he is. He's from Houtville originally, but he has travelled a little bit in his quest to find his heart's desire, let's say, when he was a little bit younger. And he ended up in a place called Velen, which is mentioned a few times in the book, in the books, which is a different nation that's like across the sea and a little bit further in. He's spent a good number of years there, and he's met some people that kind of helped him out, like maybe with some archery and other things like that, because he's not a very strong in magic, so he kind of has to he has to find some other things to do. So his potion work and his archery and other things like that. We'll get to explore all that kind of stuff. So that's the next thing that I'm writing.
Yes. So that's where he picked up the potion skills too, because that's a huge part of helping during the story.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to explore that more because I want the viewers to I want you guys to go buy this book and read it because it's amazing. But there's so much happening because it's not only told in Gretton, as we've thrown in that there's multiple points of view.
Mm-hmm.
Does he ever get to meet some of the other characters that he hasn't met before during Brina and a couple others? How does that all work out? Does he get along with them, or is it butting heads?
Yeah, he. So in the fourth book, he does meet more people. So a little spoiler that Greton doesn't die in the third book. He's still around in the fourth one. He's still there. He interacts with quite a lot of people in the fourth one. The fourth one's quite a tough journey for him, to be fair, because it's the everything's kind of it's the last book, and everything's kind of come into a head, and he's not built to be in this kind of world at that time where there's so much kind of going on. Meaning even at the start of this book, his kind of home is uprooted from his the university where he kind of hangs out and what have you. He meets up with and interacts with quite a lot of characters in the fourth one, and some ones he gets on with quite well, and some other ones that are kind of a little bit puzzled by him and his occasional bluntness and quest for truth. Yeah, he's and he does a lot. He has some very, very brave things that he does in the fourth one as well, and quite a lot of peril, sadly for him.
Yeah, he does actually quite a bit of that too in book 3, and I know in general that some of the stuff they have to go through, I would probably die, but I'm also we didn't grow up in a fantasy world. In the story, a lot of their belief systems come into question. Like, they've grown up believing this one thing about these two individuals that appear in the story. How does he handle that going into book 4? Does his view about stuff change, especially with this other individual coming on the scene? And he is confirming like all his thoughts about the spark and stuff.
Yeah, so he kind of takes that and runs with it, and like, you know, he's not, let's say, on the one hand he's quite pleased, but on the other hand he isn't, because it's quite, you know, it is what it is. So, but Greton is quite, and we'll kind of see where this kind of comes from in the books that are going to be about him. See, so with autistic people, we tend to latch onto things and they become very, very important to us. So earlier in his life, Greton is kind of asked about, like, you know, the truth of things, like, you know, what is, and it becomes very, very important to him. So his desire always is to kind of get to the truth of the matter. So, and that doesn't, and even if that is an upsetting thing to other people, and, you know, it's beside the point. Like, it's the truth is important. So when this belief system about these two gods that people worship comes into question, and his own kind of thoughts on this has been confirmed, and also because, like, a lot of his work that he's done has been censored in the past, so he's kind of like, you know, he's kind of takes satisfaction from the fact that maybe he can write the actual truth at one point. It's not enough for him to just be like, well, you know, I was right about this. He wants to know, well, where does all this come from, and you know, why did people start believing this way, and, you know, these things exist in a way, and he wants to know where they came from, and like, you know, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Like, that's very important to him, and so he's kind of exploring all that kind of stuff. So he's and again, he's kind of, there's some very, very kind of devout people that he's surrounded by, and that can be kind of a little bit uncomfortable when Greton's kind of asking his questions and doing stuff like that. So yeah,
that would be so fun to read, though. Oh, does he get a chance to actually write down some of the stuff he learns toward the end of book 4? Because I know there's going to be a lot of probably not getting to sit down for a while as a starter.
Yeah. Well, so with this series, obviously there's like, at the start of each chapter, there's like a little kind of header that has, like, you know, a little kind of like a quote or something that's like attributed to someone. So someone is writing this book in world as well. That isn't me. So someone's putting all this together, like the events of what happened. And it's a character in the world. So, and it's
yeah. Hopefully, I'm gonna hope, because that's so cool. Because he does get to retain a lot, and his memory, the way, because he's got a really good memory, he can take it and record it and just keep it there. So, and I love that, because I want I want my mind to be like that. Because obviously it's not. I have journals and stuff everywhere, but that's just, I guess, one of those things I can always hope that will never happen.
It's a blessing and a curse.
Probably, I guess. But I have notebooks everywhere. So, so with Greton in the story, at the end of it, he's still mixed up in things. Things are getting ready to amp up after one really, really big battle. What do you feel has been his biggest change since entering the story with more of a main focus, and where he's at the end of book 3? What do you feel like was his biggest change?
So I think his biggest change, and you know, bearing in mind that, like, he believes that he's always right, and most of the time that he is, but like his definition of being right is quite flexible with other people's definition of being right. So, like, you know, he may have had a thought about something at one point in the past, and then dismissed it. But then when that comes true, he's like, yes, I always knew it, right? So his way of thinking has become a little bit more flexible through this journey, and he has become more proactive in terms of like seeking out like his truth, whereas like before he would have been quite sedentary and just kind of waited for reports to come to him and done this. Now he's out in the field and he's doing things, and he's like interacting, but he's also kind of quite frustrated because the reason that he's in the story, like, or what he thinks is in the story, is because, and this is where the kind of rigid thinking comes in, is that he feels that like he is there because he has to help Colleen with something, and he won't accept the fact that maybe he has already helped her by just being him and being a friend, and that's what she needed more than anything at the time for what her journey was. But he kind of thinks that it was like some big grand thing that he is there to help with, and might be his thing to kind of figure out in the next book. Whereas it's like, it's not always the grand things. Sometimes it's just pulling someone back from the edge of darkness, I suppose, and the edge of hopelessness.
Yeah, which would be very fitting for that entire situation during that book, because there's a lot of struggle between light and dark. Not just with the characters, but outside of them, going on with other people in the area, and I'm trying to be as vague as possible. So,
yeah.
Wow. So
it's a series with a lot of mysteries, which like I wasn't, I knew that when I wrote the first one, and the first one is like kind of a gentle kind of introduction into like, there's hints for all this kind of other things going on, I think. But yeah, the third one is, the third and the fourth one was going to be one book originally, and I don't know why I was thinking that there was going to be one book, because the fourth book is even bigger than the third one, and they deal with quite a lot of big concepts and a lot of, a lot of mysteries and a lot of challenges, a lot of the characters. But I think what I hope anyway is that it's the characters that are front and center, and Greton's definitely one that kind of you can point to and say, like, his personality shines through, I think.
Yes, sweet. Well, I look forward to seeing what happens with him in book 4. David, go ahead and tell our listeners and viewers where they can snag copies of this entire series and follow you.
Well, here is the third one with its lovely cover. Greton isn't on the cover, unfortunately, but that's Colleen, and that's Brina and Cade. And it's a big book. It's pretty chunky. So yeah, you can. The books are all available on Amazon, and they're exclusive to Amazon. Unfortunately, at the moment, for people that don't like Amazon, but the contract, the terms of being exclusive are coming to a close pretty soon, so they might be going wide. So you can get them there. And me, you can find me on my website on davidgreenwriter.com, and my newsletter is on there as well, which is probably the best place to keep up with all kinds of news. And yeah, the books 1 to 3 are out, and book 4, which is called At Eternity's Gates, is out on September the 18th.
Ooh, sweet.
So pretty soon.
Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us today, and hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't. Be sure to grab a copy of David's books, and remember, it's always time to go indie now.
Marauder's Bluff. That is the name of it. That is the island's name, Greton replied, holding up a finger. And yes, that is they. But the stories are crazed experiments, and they're like just that. Stories. A grand way of keeping unwanted visitors away. Aha, he grinned as he pulled out a small iron key. Come along. I have wanted to show my library to somebody new for decades. Colleen couldn't deny Greton's infectious excitement. Giving Turnout one last look, she hurried to join him, hasting her heels as the old sparkler unlocked the door and, with a grin, threw it open. It's not exactly homey, is it? Colleen remarked, hands on hips. Greton closed the door with his foot, the covered package from his saddlebags in his hands. and gloom smothered the disappointing room. Also, I hate to tell you, seeing as you seem pretty excited about it, but most libraries I've seen have more than one bookcase. Greton raised an eyebrow and crossed to the unit, beckoning Colleen to follow. "Pick up the book, young Sparker," he murmured, nodding at one with a faded green spine. "That one right there will do." Colleen glanced at the book, and then at Greton, then back at the tome again. Sighing, she reached out and laid her fingers on it. "Is this one of your favourites, or is there some kind of..." The creaking of wood from behind cut off her words. The floor had parted, revealing a flight of stairs leading below. "Have a little faith, Colleen. Did you really think I would leave my library and all my research up here where anyone could simply walk in and find it?